IVM.
Hey everyone, welcome to Shunya One, episode 178. Today we are talking to Sakshi Vij. Sakshi Vij, she's the founder of Myles Cars. It's a very, very interesting, fascinating kind of vehicle and mobility service, if you might want to call it. But because they do everything from subscriptions for cars to self-drive cars, and you've definitely heard the name already if you've looked at buying or renting your own vehicle. I had a really interesting conversation. I think some of the facts and insights that she gave on the industry as to why it's such a big thing now, all the way to talking about electric vehicles and how they're definitely going to change the way car ownership works in India. I'm sure you'll love the conversation we had. So let's take a break and come back and join Sakshi in this conversation.
इन्फ्लेशन, फिस्कल डेफिसिट, जीडीपी, एमएसपी, एनपीए, इक्विटी मार्केट वगैरह वगैरह। दोस्तों, हमने सारे शब्द टीवी या अखबार में जरूर देखे होंगे या फिर सुने होंगे, पर हम में से कितने लोग हैं जो ये जानते हैं कि इन सब का सीधा प्रभाव पड़ता है हमारी सैलरी पर, हमारे इंक्रीमेंट पर और कमबख्त हमारे खर्चों पर। दोस्तों, मेरा नाम है अभिनव त्रिवेदी और मैं बात कर रहा हूँ इक्का दुक्का इकोनॉमी पॉडकास्ट से, जहाँ पे इस तरह के इकोनॉमिक और फाइनेंशियल टर्म्स को मैं जोड़ूंगा सीधा आपकी जेब से। हर मंगलवार एक नया एपिसोड सुने IVM पॉडकास्ट की वेबसाइट, ऐप या फिर किसी भी अन्य पॉडकास्ट प्लेटफॉर्म पर।
Hi, Sakshi. Welcome to Shunya One. How are you doing today? How are things?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, it's really, really great to have you. And I know, we were chatting earlier about how crazy the outside is. I understand you're sitting in Delhi, just waiting for the cold weather, like all of us, to sort of get started.
At this point in time, we're just waiting for anything that gets us below 43 degrees.
My goodness.
I mean, it's a crazy time to be in Delhi right now. Nobody likes it.
Exactly. And this is coming from a place where people are used to the high 40s, but I think this time around it's just bad. It's really bad.
Yeah, I think it's also too early. I think it's too early to be 43. But,
I know. And you might say that, given the kind of business you are in, I'm sure a lot of folks, a lot of your customers are actually trying to get out of the city, like just book a car and just drive off into the hills if it's any better there. Are you seeing? I'm sure that's already happening earlier than before.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. In fact, we were just having this conversation this morning about how suddenly there's a rush of, the self-drive part of our business going up significantly, which is where people take weekend breaks, and the weekends are now extending way into the weeks, and everyone's taking those long weekends out. So clearly there's a lot of work from home happening, but
Right.
we're introducing the work from the hills. I think I'm going to so that's happening on the self-drive product for sure.
Wonderful. So before, obviously, we get into a little bit more about exactly all the, facets of the business. Sakshi, just for everyone listening in, what could you tell us about how you got here, to the journey of, let's say, Miles, and before that, a little bit of your own, let's say, entrepreneurial journey so far.
Okay. So I have been a mobility professional now for about 15 years, over 15 years. I spent the initial part of my career after I finished. So I was studying in Singapore and Dubai. I was doing my MBA. I came back. I was hugely exposed to how connected, developed small city network works in cities like Dubai and Singapore, and also exposed to the wonderful public transport systems that these countries,
I was going to
have.
say, both those
Yeah.
cities, I think, are just known for, if the map tells you you're going to get somewhere in 7 minutes, you always get there in 7 minutes, no matter what. It's just, yeah.
Exactly. And then I land myself back in Delhi, and I realized, well, we're not there. We have a lot to be desired. We have a lot to do. I, of course, started my career representing Hertz Rent-A-Car in India. I spent a lot of time, and Hertz Rent-A-Car is a has been the global number one in car rental services for the longest time, and spent a lot of time doing that. Then launched one of India's largest radio taxi brands in India called Easy Cabs. People in Delhi and Bombay might remember that a little. It came way before the Ubers and the Olas came. We then also ran an operating lease business. So, really, what I was doing in the first 10 years of my career was figuring out how to buy cars and make them available to people for shorter term basis. Um, but I think the learning from that really was that actually buying cars is not very easy. Buying any vehicle is not very easy. And therefore, in 2018 is when we launched my current venture, which is called Myles. Myles Automotive Technologies really makes vehicle ownership and usage accessible, affordable, and convenient. That's what we say in a single line. But what we're really trying to do is we believe that it's very difficult to own a car. It's very difficult to own any vehicle. It comes with its own set of challenges. And we're trying to make it simple by a simple single application technology that sits on your phone and lets you decide what car you want to drive today and change it the next day.
Now, of course, I think a lot of people listening in would know Miles. I think you've been, in the self-drive section at least for, it's a very well-known name. And even the brands you just mentioned, Easy Cabs. I think we've seen these waves of car products, if I can call it that, and we've seen the big wave of the cab, the cab aggregator services sort of changing the way people look at vehicles and not usage, not just ownership. But one of the things that you mentioned about cars being just tough to buy, I think that's been the case for a long, long time in India, especially, right? I mean, even when you came back from abroad, places, other countries, like say the United States or Europe, everywhere, car leasing or the second-hand car market overall has been a lot more mature. I think it's just India that has been very, I don't know, it's been challenging. I don't think I've seen a smooth car lease service the way you could lease a car in the US, happening here until products like yours have launched. So, what was the reason behind that? Was it just the cost of like getting into a business like this? What was it? Like, especially if you could talk from even the hurts and that from that experience, like why were they not doing it in India, let's say, the way they were doing it elsewhere?
I I don't know if I can put in one single reason why it was not happening, but I think we discovered a lot of gaps that existed and why they existed. I think it really came to begin with from the fact that where are we? Where are we in terms of the number of cars that people are buying in India? In India, for example, there are only about 25 people who own cars for every 1,000 population, which means there are 25 cars. Yeah, there are only 25 cars per 1,000 people. In the United States, this number is close to about 500 cars per 1,000 people. In China, this number is over 600 cars per 1,000 people. And those are the economies, and those are really the economies where more interesting business models of how you can own a car exist. It's a lack of more flexible options. It's the lack of greater accessibility for people is what we discovered, because it's still very difficult to own a vehicle when the call that you have to take is for, on an average, a 7 to 8 lakh rupee expenditure, because that's what an average vehicle costs in India. Even from the perspective of, even if you let go of, I have the savings to invest in a 7 8 lakh rupee car, you further go in and say, hey, but I also have to get this car maintained. I also need to buy insurance. I also may run into an accident. I may have to file an insurance claim. I may be stuck in the middle of the road. How am I going to manage all of this? Now, all of this for an average individual from any part of the world, this is not just Indians, from any part of the world, it's a fairly difficult task. It's fairly time consuming, fairly cumbersome, which is where the more flexible options of ownership come in. So, what we do in Miles, in our subscription product, is really allow you to own a car. Your monthly budget that you want to spend on a car decides which car you own, instead of, hey, I don't have money to buy a Mercedes. That's not the decision that you have to take, because you don't have to invest over 50 lakh rupees. You probably just have to take a call on, do you want to spend 50,000 rupees per month on a
Right.
car? Well, then you can have a Mercedes. That's the
Wonderful. I
decision
mean,
that you take.
and that's such a stark, I would say, difference from, like you said earlier, right? When the market was, I guess there were no serious customers who actually really wanted this. Would you say there's been a shift in consumer preference also? Like, is renting or leasing or short term, long term, whatever rentals, are those things which people have warmed up to, and hence products like yours today exist? Like, or was it, has there been a shift in mindset change, do you think? Yeah, cars were like an asset, depreciating asset. It's like a very, in a lot of families, I'm sure even now, it's a milestone, right? It's your first car or the family's car. It's like a thing people plan for, just like a house. But now we've seen even that's changed, I would say. So do you think cars have fallen into that bracket finally, that I don't need to own one?
You have totally stolen words from my mouth, because that's when we started. When I was just starting out, that's what everyone used to say. Like, why am I going to take a car on self-drive? Why am I going to take a car on subscription? In India, everyone likes to own their car. Buying a
Right.
car is a milestone. The first car is a milestone. The first SUV is a milestone. The first Mercedes you buy is a milestone. These are all, these are big milestones in your life. But also, if you think about it, the moment financial institutions and auto finance companies came into being, the idea of owning a car went away anyways, because it was the financial institution which owned the vehicle.
Of course.
Even today, when you take a loan, car is of the bank.
It's the
You
bank.
don't own the
Exactly.
car. You pay the loan, and then it becomes your own, and then you
That's
sell
true.
it off at a particular point in time. But also, there's a reason why a lot of people take so long to be able to get the ownership of a vehicle, because they really need to build up their credit scores, their savings. They need to be able to take a loan of the value to the value of the vehicle and become
Yeah.
capable of taking a loan of that kind. All of this is changing for, I'd say there are a few reasons for it. First up, I think there's a large chunk of population which is very mobile today. A lot of us are shifting cities. A lot of us are shifting countries. We're all sort of moving a lot, and therefore that commitment to one particular vehicle for a longish period of time seems a little difficult. The other is asset ownership in every walk of life is changing, right? The number of people who are owning real estate are changing. The
Yeah.
number of people who want to own uh, jewelry, which was at one point in time considered an asset, is changing.
Oh, man.
Gold bonds is where people want to put over gold. Holiday rentals are becoming important. People are even sharing, clothes now. Furniture is getting shared. All of that is happening.
Yeah.
And I sometimes get very. I used to get very surprised when fashion labels started introducing subscription and sharing services.
Right.
But it's happening. A car, in any case, is a much higher investment. And it's technically not an investment, right? It's like you just mentioned, it's a depreciating asset. So how do I then say that I'm going to own this car and it's going to be mine, and I will continue? I mean, it holds a lot of sentimental value,
Yeah.
and I still remember that when I was growing up, my dad had a Contessa Classic. I don't know how
Wow.
many listeners
Yeah,
would
I
know
remember
about
it.
the Contessa Classic, but it was a wonderful vehicle. I
Yeah.
still have fond memories of it. Given a chance, I'd love to subscribe to it today if it's still available.
If it
I
were,
don't know
yeah.
if I'll be able to. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a story behind every vehicle that we own, but I think more and more people are willing to make that change quicker and say, "Hey, I'm ready to drive a hatchback today, and a year later my income has gone up, and now I can spend more on my vehicle, but I don't want to be stuck with that same hatchback that I bought a year ago." Now,
Yeah.
how can subscription services change that? By just telling you return the car,
Yeah.
take the next car that you want. So
And
that's what.
you're
Yeah.
seeing this happen in actuality. I mean, people have. Do you have stats on? I mean, or have you heard that people have actually given up on purchasing and shifted like what's the split between, let's say, new car buyers who would not have otherwise been able to afford to buy a car and now they can afford to, let's say, subscribe, versus people who like used to have cars, they probably decided to no longer own it and to move to subscription. Have you heard both formats?
So I'll tell you what we've seen, which is really interesting. One of the ways in which people buy cars today and have continued to for a while is by walking up to dealerships. Right? A car dealership. You go to a dealership, you test drive a car. It's a big family outing. You decide this is the car that I want, and then go ahead and purchase it. What we saw is, and our statistics told us, and we did a lot of research on it, and we said for every 100 people that walk into a dealership is able to sell the car to 5 people. Five of those people, which means a 5% chance of that car getting sold for every 100 people walking in. What we are able to deliver, and ours is a technology product, so we also work a lot with dealerships. We provide them a subscription option
Right.
for each of their outlets. For us, every customer that's walking in the dealership now, instead of converting 5, is able to convert 7 or 8 customers now, which
Wow.
means that there is, in terms of their overall conversion, we've actually led to, well, about
Almost 50% or more.
60% more,
Yeah.
60% more conversion.
Yeah.
So that's really what's happening. So from where the customer was today, the reason why those 95 customers were not buying the car that they walked in to purchase at the dealership
Right.
could have been, and is in most cases, the budget that they have in mind, the whether they are interested in keeping the same car for the next 4, 5, 6 years.
Right.
Some of them just need more flexibility, and they just need to be able to own this car for a shorter period of time. So we get a lot of customers who say, "Hey, I just want to keep this car for a year,"
Hmm.
and that's possible on a subscription platform. And
No, it's
that's changing.
definitely.
That's where the customers move.
And that commitment is a large commitment. So I'm sure this option for reducing the commitment from whatever that may have been, not just in monetary terms, but ownership terms, is a massive flexibility that you're offering. Yeah.
So,
Uh,
the way I see it, I would want people to be able to say, "Hey, I can change my car every month."
yeah.
We currently have people changing their car every year. On an average, people are taking our cars on subscription for about 36 months, in fact. So there are people
Right.
who would have otherwise taken a 3-year loan on a vehicle are now saying, "I'm ready to take this car on subscription for 3 years," because it just gives me the option of opting out when I want to.
And the math is almost the same as what I recall when I looked at these options, but more or less the same. Depends on the car, I
In
guess.
terms of the cost of ownership, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, pretty much. because of the flexibility that it introduces for
Right.
an individual. Because I mean, think about it. How do I think about staying in sort of like a dream apartment today? Most
Right.
people are just renting them out.
Right.
Um, some of some of the most affluent startup founders are also sitting, pretty much figuring out how they can keep changing their apartment as
Of
frequently as
course.
possible.
Of course. Why wouldn't they? No, so it makes a complete sense. In fact, from a consumer
Yeah.
point of view, I think it's always been the case that it's something people have wanted, and it's great that your platform is able to do this for people. I have a lot more questions on the other side of it, on the business side of it. But before we jump in there, let's take a quick break and come back and talk some more.
Hello, everybody. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On this round is on me, Asha Zaveri and Karan Shah of Swati Snacks share their culinary journey with Gauri. On Shunya One, Shiladitya asked Darshan Patija, CEO and co-founder of Vault, about his crypto journey. On Cyrus Says His Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Puneet, Nivedita and Antariksh discussed a Madhya Pradesh man's complaint about consuming alcohol that had no kick. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discussed Windgreen's latest acquisition and influencers turning into podcasters. And on the Musafir story, Saif and Faiza meet travel couple Ranjani and Raghavan, who take us to Rajasthan's quaint little town of Bundi. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, we've been doing a series of profiles of people within the office, so do check that out for sure. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We have a page on our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, with a list of all our channels. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you, the listener, responds to the advertising on our network. And also, we just want to know a little bit more about you. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it out. It will really help us build some better shows for you. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, SBI Life Insurance and Jupiter, a digital banking app.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Sakshi, you've been sharing, the consumer side story of how people have really warmed up to buying cars on a subscription. Even the self-drive product that you have short term, there's a lot of popularity around it, I know. But reasons behind what you said, where how the world changed towards thinking, how the consumers' thought process changed on their ownership options, and how they don't need to own this asset or this milestone asset anymore, and they can just think of the advantages of switching over. What were the other business side, or the, let's say, legal, government, regulatory side aspects, were there any which prevented this from being a viable business for, let's say, yourselves or any other company which tried to do this before? Like I recall, I think for a subscription car also, the number plate is different from a owned plate, right? A owned car number plate, right? If I'm not wrong, is that still there? Are those regulations still there? Is there anything else which prevented this from being more popular early on?
So, we actually thought about our business differently when we started out. We believe that the entire car ownership ecosystem exists in the country. There are manufacturers, there are financiers, there are maintenance companies, insurance companies, roadside assistance services, IoT device providers. Everyone exists, right?
Right.
When we started thinking about our product, the way we wanted to engage with the market, engage with the customer, it was essentially about saying, can we make this ecosystem available to the customer better? So we were not trying to say that I am going to provide a product that does not exist in the market in terms of what the customer is driving. Customer is used to driving a private vehicle, and therefore you should get a private vehicle,
Right.
which is where we went in. The customer is used to having their car maintained. The customer is used to having different vehicle options available for them. That's what we wanted to bring about as well. So our forte is to understand the system, go deep into it, and then create technologies that can solve the gaps in the system. So, for example, I know that on an average, in order to buy a car, an individual ends up spending close to about between 40 to 50 hours, work hours of effort, which is the research that you do first online.
Right.
Then you would typically ask a few friends. Then you would find who's the nearest dealership around you. Then you will go visit the dealership or ask them to send the car for a test drive, all of that, right?
Right.
So what we did for that is the dealership exists, the OEM exists. We've got all the data of it on a single platform, and you can order your test drive to come to your house. So whatever may be the vehicle, you can order as many test drives as you want. You just select the car in the comfort of your house. Additionally, you now no longer need to take a decision of, like I said, 8 lakh or 20 lakh or 25 lakh or 50 lakh rupee car. You only have to decide how much you want to spend per month on your vehicle, which is again different from where how we were deciding on vehicles in the
Right.
past. The other thing is now that I have the car, how many people do I have to interact with on a monthly basis to make sure that I can drive my car properly? There's a maintenance company, there's an insurance company, there is a roadside assistance service, there's some sort of a fueling agency. If it's an electric vehicle, it's the charging infrastructure, all of
Right.
that, right?
Right.
How can we make sure all of this is available on a single platform? So that's where we are. So you've got yourself an app where you can order all of these services. In fact, you don't even need to order some of them. We'll keep track of when your car needs to go for service because we have that.
Of course.
We'll send you a replacement car. We'll make sure you're comfortable. So,
Wow.
so we were just trying to make everything exist and not change too much in terms of the good parts of the experience for the customer, but actually add value. And that's where our tech came. So, I mean, while I'm not an engineer by qualification, but I've always believed in creating superior products, and I believe technology allows you to create a lot of those products. And therefore, our work was to get the ecosystem enabled. And that's what we're doing. We're creating a platform that enables the ecosystem of vehicle ownership to simplify for the end user. So that's what we're doing. On your specific point on whether private cars can be given on subscription versus commercial vehicles or number plate being different, that is not required right now because those options always exist. So if a financial company is coming and owning the asset, the regulatory framework allows for private car to be given on subscription because it's not a rental service. It's a subscription service.
That's interesting. So again, I think these were just those big hairy problems which no one really sort of got a way into, right, to solve. And I think when that's exactly what you guys have done. And of course, tech is the common enabler for all of that. How have you seen even the tech piece evolve? And if I may have a second follow up to the earlier question, the OEM or the manufacturer, which is such a large part of this whole framework of yours, how have you seen them sort of also being more adaptive to this change of in the way of doing things?
So, we've actually been very fortunate. And I hate to use this sentence, but I think COVID was a blessing for us. Why? Because a lot of manufacturers were sitting and figuring out what's the best way to innovate. April 2020 was when Indian auto majors did zero sales in the country.
Yes.
That had never happened. And there were, I know there were new auto companies who were saying us and Maruti did the same sales in April 2020.
Wow.
So, that was happening. But we were also fortunate that that a lot of the OEMs were willing to listen. They were willing to understand what can be done when you make the same product that they're selling more accessible. So we then started talking, and we we started working very closely with OEMs to plan their subscription products, or rather to make sure that their cars can be available on subscription. So we actually have partnerships running with MG Motors, which is Morris Garage, which was a new entrant in the country at that market at that time. Now, of course, a very popular brand, and there's a wonderful story to tell there. We also have Maruti Suzuki, who we partner with for their subscription product. We also work with Toyota. So this group together, I think, covers about 60% of the total car ownership market in the country. And they were very encouraged by what subscription can enable in the market. And not only did we provide them a solution in terms of just making sure all of their cars have a subscription option and there's a monthly price point on which the customer can purchase it, but we also provided them our own technology, which made sure that the customer then has a singular experience no matter where they're going. So that became quite interesting. I think even the end user, to be honest, while they took a little while to get used to things like I can test drive a car, book it online, I can subscribe to a car and not worry about using it for as long a period. I don't have to own a car for the next 5 years, etc. While it took some time, but now we've got. I know that there are a lot of small business owners who find this much easier because everyone wants to concentrate on their business instead of managing the car. Managing a car can sometimes be a full-time job for some people.
Yeah, it's a big load off your head, I'm sure, of just having to bother about something, an expensive item that.
I agree, and so I think that's change that has happened. I think there's a lot of adoption of technology. I think customers are more comfortable that I can see at any given point of time how much have I traveled, what's my next billing cycle, where does when does my insurance get renewed, when and all of this is happening in the back end, right? You don't have to worry about it; it's just available to you. So those things make a lot of difference.
No, I'm sure. And the two more things which you touched upon, which I would love to get more insight on. Like one is two other business outcomes of this, right? One is the second-hand car market. I think because of, let's say, subscription products like yours, do you see that impacting the fact that there are more people who are buying new on subscription than letting go of the car, and then that car goes into circulation into the second-hand car market? How has your business impacted that, or do you have any views on the second-hand car market being better in India now? I think, if anecdotally, I've had some people tell me it used to be a low trust market. Right, you had to really buy a car from someone you trusted or through a lot of referrals. Have you seen that change? And is it because of the things you guys are doing in any way?
Very humbly, I would say that I think we're too early and too young to be competing or making dents on the used car market. I think there are far larger entities who are doing some wonderful work there. What has, of course, happened are a couple of things. And this really changes the way vehicle market expands globally. One is, whenever we have seen the used car market expand in any country, that has led to alternate ownership models also expand. So the used car market actually helps, the expansion of the used car market helps services like ours. Nice. In India today, I think they're almost 2.5 or 3 times the size of the new car market, which is great science, which also means that a lot of people are now willing to own cars for shorter periods of time, because the used car market expands when there are shorter, younger cars coming to the used car market.
Correct.
So that's interesting. I think on our end, how we work with the used car market. One, of course, we provide used vehicles to our customers as well. So a customer can return their vehicle and then it can go to another person as well. The other is we have the entire history of a vehicle while it was in
Yes.
usage. So that makes it very interesting for it to be sold in the second-hand market
Yeah.
because that kind of data was never available. As you rightly said, right? We were used to buying cars from people who we knew.
Right.
Everyone wanted some trust. We're building trust through data. And we're really saying, can I give you, an entire history of this vehicle and tell you that, hey, this is how it's done in the last 2 years, and therefore you can decide how much you want to pay for it. So that's how we are working with the used car.
Wonderful. This is exactly what I was thinking would be the case, and it's exactly that. So the other aspect which you touched upon, especially given your partnership with, let's say, MG Motors, I think, and the others, is the electric vehicle category. Uh, that not only is it very interesting, and it's a great move for for everything, for mobility in general, and the earth and so on. But how have you seen it also comes with a lot more, I would say, aspects of ownership infrastructure, like you said, charging infra, uh, all of this data, of course. So how have you seen interest in that? Or do you think EVs are just meant for this sort of a subscription model, particularly more suited for a subscription model like this, given that they're meant to be, they're long, there's much lesser wear and tear, all of the good parts of owning an EV, right? So why is it your favorite subject also?
It's my favorite subject for exactly that reason. I think EV's subscription just makes so much sense. And I say that for with data internally because about 35% of the vehicles that we've given on subscription so far are actually EVs.
Wow.
On a daily basis, about 20% of the leads that we get, 20% of the inquiries or requests that we get are actually for electric vehicles. Now, I'll tell you why this is the case. And this is the case and this is the case globally. It's happening because one, the upfront cost of owning an electric vehicle is very high, and it's high everywhere. Um, how do you mitigate that high upfront cost? By making sure that it can be owned over an extended period of time, but also you reduce the upfront payment or commitment on that vehicle, which is what subscription does. Even more than the upfront cost, there's a lot of uncertainty in electric vehicle technology at this point. Because there are limited models that exist right now in terms of the number of electric vehicles, also the batteries that exist in the market, the battery technology which is ever evolving. There is a certain amount of uncertainty which only comes because of lack of data. I genuinely believe that there are some wonderful vehicles. I myself drive an electric vehicle in Delhi. But there is a certain amount of anxiety that the customer has on what will happen if the battery fails.
Yeah.
How much will this car be at the end of term? After 5 years, what will it sell for? All of that.
Yeah.
We're just able to eliminate all of that anxiety through subscription because now you don't have to take those calls. Now you just have to take a call that I want to drive an electric vehicle. It's going to cost me maybe 20,000 rupees a month, and I can drive it for the period that I want to and return the car when I'm done with it or move to the next vehicle. I don't have to worry about how much will it sell for. I don't have to worry about the battery failure. I don't have to worry about so many other anxieties that I may.
Yeah.
So I think that's really why EV subscription is my favorite subject.
No, it's And it's perfect. And I think it's what you just said about this upfront, the mitigation of this upfront cost and the anxiety factor, given that it's such a new sector of vehicles for most people, is exactly what will probably lead to more adoption. So we all know that if more EVs are adopted, it's better for everyone. I guess it's the next wave of uh, cars all over the world. So I think what you guys are doing with enabling this is very critical to the success of EVs in general. So great to know that.
Thank you. No, we absolutely believe that the EV segment, a customer who's coming with interest in using an electric vehicle will find subscription more interesting for the reasons that I mentioned. It's far quicker for us to see the decision making of a customer who's come with an EV request. They're just more sure. They're just more like, I'm taking the call on EV now. Just tell me how I can make it simpler for myself. And,
Awesome.
and that's something.
No, that's great to know, Sakshi. I mean, there's so much more. I would love to probably even keep asking you about, the business model and the kind of cars that are coming up. But closing notes, what's the next, like year or couple of years outlook on where you want to take the company, where you want to take the business? And of course, if people who are listening to the show, they want to reach out to you, if you can shout out your LinkedIn or Twitter handle or wherever people want to reach you best.
Thank you. So the next couple of years look very exciting. We believe that we would like to reach in the 6 million cars that are owned in this country, about 20% of those cars should be on subscription in the next 3 years. I know that's a huge number. It sounds like a huge number, but then we're also going to see a huge expansion of the car market. We're at 20, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, we're just 25 people per 25 cars per 1,000 people. So there's a lot of cars that need to be added in the market. So that's a number that we're definitely gunning for, and we would like to be leaders in that growth. We definitely see EVs becoming an even greater part of our fleet as the number of vehicles expand. We'd love to see more and more people coming in and taking up more and more EVs in the market. It's just better. It's just better in so many ways. And I would love everyone to reach out to us at Myles Cars. We are Myles Cars everywhere: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Please follow us.
Amazing. So, of course, we'll share those details when we send this episode out. And of course, everyone else listening in, if you love the conversation, please share, give us a rating wherever you're listening to this on your podcast app. Give us a rating, a review. Everything definitely helps. And Sakshi, thank you so much for this conversation. I think, what you guys are enabling is amazing. I know a lot of people hopefully be inspired to look at the option of subscribing, look at the Myles self-drive, definitely get away for a weekend, if nothing else. I think it's the best option. I know I've done it, so I definitely know the advantages of having a larger car, which you don't need to own, and just take it out for a nice long drive. So yes, it's really, really fascinating stuff that you guys are doing, and obviously looking forward to seeing you expand the market, as you mentioned. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see you getting out to the hills, working from the hills very soon as well.
Yes, that's the perfect marketing byline, I think, for anyone in your industry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people, and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.
What is the workplace, and how does your gender and body affect your right at work? Hey, I'm Priya Mirza, and on the Longest Constitution podcast, we critically examine the vision of the Indian Constitution and laws. In season 1, we looked at sex, gender, sexuality in India, and the landmark judgments which transformed our rights as citizens in this country. In season 2, we discussed the laws which shape the workplace and examine how ability, competence, and merit impact us, and much more. Join me, Priya Mirza, every Wednesday only on the IVM Podcast app, website, and all the major podcast streaming platforms.